Welcome to TC's Train Repair and Restoration. Today we're going to rewind a RivaRossi motor. So let's head to the shop and get started. Gotta go this way. Alright guys, let's take a look at rewinding an armature. I already started taking my armature apart, so since I already have it apart, I'm happy to actually have it apart, because this way I can show you parts of the armature and what to look for when you go to take yours apart. If you ever go to rewind one, you'll know what to look for. Now, first thing is, why would we have to rewind an armature? Well, if anything, you're either going to have a short, or windings might be burnt. A lot of times if you see your armature that the windings are all black, might mean that it was overheated because of a short. And the easiest way to check it is from the commutator, doing resistance tests, which you'll use your digital voltmeter and go from one plate to another plate and take the resistance, and then go from this one to this one, and then again go from here down to this one, and from here over to this one, all different directions like that. Now when I did mine, I came up with 5.6, one was 10, one was 11, so you want a low number on resistance. Now another thing you could check for is a short from your commutator to the stacks, or even to the armature itself. If you do a continuity test and you have continuity between your commutator and your stack, then that means your insulation, the windings went through the insulation on the stack somewhere. Now if you look at the armature, you could see this pink here. This is actually an insulation. It's almost like a plastic that they put over the stack. Now this is considered a 3-pole motor because there's 3 stacks. And as you can see, this one I already got the wire off of. Now this is 34 gauge wire, and actually I even had the commutator off. These commutators are only made out of, most likely back then, it was probably Bakelite with the copper plate on them, and they're only pressed on the shaft, so they do come off easy. I just took a little screwdriver and popped it right off. When you go to take it off, there's actually 3 spots on your commutator where the wires will connect. You'll see the solder joints on the sides where they solder the wires on. You're going to have to unsolder the wires from there. Now usually you'll have a wire will come from one stack here, will come up, and then one from here will come up, and they twist them together and then solder them in place. So I unsoldered it, untwisted the wires, and then I started to pull them off, but the wire was sticking in the windings as I was trying to pull it off, and this wire is so thin it just kept breaking. So I just took a X-Acto knife and I cut them. So I still got these other 2 to do. You want to try and peel them off so you can count how many turns are on the armature. Since I'm just going to have to cut it off because it kept breaking, what I did was I'm just saving all the wire. I'm putting it all in a cup, and then what I'm going to do is weigh it. I'll put an empty cup on the scale, zero it, and then I'll weigh the cup full of wire. And since we have 3 poles, whatever that comes up, let's say it comes up as 3 grams, well then I know it's going to be a gram of wire for each stack. Now I'll take the new wire and I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers, maybe 10 or 15 times, leave it attached to the spool yet, set it in the cup on the scale, and just leave extra wire hanging so it's no pressure, which this ain't going to really put much pressure on it because of how thin the wire is. And I'll put, you know, I'll take off enough until I get a gram of weight, and then I'll cut it. And what I have in the cup, then I'll take it and I'll wrap it around the length of a 12-inch ruler. This way, every time you circle a 12-inch ruler, that's 2 feet of wire. So then you'll know if you go around 5 times, well, that's, you know, 10 feet. So then you'd have 10 feet of wire would go on here. So then this way you know how much wire to cut off your spool. Now this wire is real thin, like I said. I don't know if you could see it here on the camera. I think you could. But this is like, it'd be like taking your mother's or your wife's sewing thread and trying to put it through a needle. That's how thin this wire is. And it breaks real easy. Here's a new spool. You can buy the wire on Amazon. It's only like 12 bucks for 4 ounces of it. 4 ounces is more than enough. You get like 1,800 feet on a roll. And I'll try and get this rubber band off. And you got to make sure you buy magnetic wire. Magnetic wire is what is on an armature, because you're creating a magnetic field. You can't just run regular copper wire on it. Now, they make all different colors. There's red, there's green, there is the copper color. So as you can see, like, this is real thin, this wire. I don't know if you could see that. Yeah. But, and this is, like I said, 34 gauge. There's 1,800 feet on here. So you got plenty of wire, more than enough to do a couple motors probably. So in my next video, I'll show you wrapping the armature. But now the difference too, another thing is when these are wrapped, these are done by machine in the factory, and these windings aren't perfect. So they're overlapping each other because it's wrapped so fast, and sometimes if you can get them all off, you might come up with, let's say you're supposed to be 125 on here. One might be 125, one might be 123, one might be 124. And the reason why is they're measuring the length of wire they're putting on here. So as the machine is counting the feet or inches, millimeters, whatever going on here, if this starts wrapping up on top of layer on top of each other in one spot, you're going to use the wire up quicker, which will give you less turns on the armature. So if, when you hand wind the motor, at least you could sit here and lay the wires out nice, one alongside the other, and keep the rows nice and even, and keep, you know, do one at a time and all, and you could get it a lot more even than a machine would. So of course hand wound is better than machine wound, but that little bit, that 1 or 2 extra turns is not going to affect your motor performance really. So, but that's about all there is to it. for right now, like I said, I got to cut all the rest of the wire off. When you cut your wire, if you have to cut the wire off, try not cutting through into this insulation. If you get towards, like, I'm just using an X-Acto knife, but when you get to like the bottom layer, put your tip facing, your blade facing upward, so this way as you pull on the wire, you're pulling away from it, and this way you won't ruin your insulation. If you ever did have a short where you had continuity going from your stack to your commutator, and you know there's something wrong with your insulation, you could probably just use a 2-part epoxy and cover it up. But you'd have to try and figure out where your short's at, unless you're going to want to just put epoxy over the whole thing. But you want just a thin layer, because otherwise you don't want to be pushing this wires out further and further, because you get them out too far, you might not get your commutator on as far as you need to, or maybe the wire might hit the housing of your motor. So you want to try and keep everything even. Like, I mean, you look at this and you can see the way this one's stacked, the top, as they got to the top, I'm trying to get a good view here for you, but the top, the bottom is narrow, and then as it gets towards the top, it goes out more. And actually the commutator sat right down to the very bottom on this one, when right against the wire like that, which is okay, because like I said, the commutator is made out of Bakelite, so you ain't got to worry about it shorting against the wire or anything like that. And even at that, and then, you know, when you're done, you just put it back on, and then you got to just make sure you line up so you have where your solder points were, which would be basically the plate. This copper plate goes from here to here. You want to line it up so that this is centered in between your stacks, so you can solder it back together. And same thing over, you know, for each of the sides. So all that we'll go over in the next video as I go and start winding it. But that should be about it for now. If I miss something and I catch it when I post this video, I'll try and update when I go to start winding the armature again. So I have my wire and all, so maybe later today I'll get the rest of this wire off and see how much wire it takes to put on the armature, and then I could start wrapping it back up. So okay, we'll see you in the next video, and you guys have a good day.